Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. A Day to Remember. Francina Tutiliogi sat up in bed, holding on to dear life the photo of the man who melted her heart, Troy Edwards. It was the night before the big day, the biggest day in her life, where she was going to walk down that aisle and say, "I do," officially becoming Mrs. Troy Edwards. It was the moment her family had been awaiting, including all her cousins, distant and close, from all over the town. As she glanced at the photo of the striking young man, his golden hair that was slicked back, and ocean blue eyes that possessed serenity in them, with whom she'd spend the rest of her life, she sighed dreamily as she began to reminisce about the first time they laid eyes on each other. 1 year ago, during the summer, Troy was a student at the University of Cambridge studying English when he was offered a study abroad program that gave him the opportunity to travel to Italy. The summer program lasted for 7 weeks, and it was during one of those 7 weeks when he made a chance encounter with Francina. She was making her way back home from grocery shopping, and he was trying to find the best restaurant in town. She bumped into him, both hands carrying bags filled with vegetables and other ingredients for dinner, with a carrot falling to the ground. He picked it up for her, and when she looked up, she was enthralled by what she saw. With a sheepish grin, he spoke to her in flawless Italian, asking her for directions to the nearest restaurant for dinner. She laughed, replying to him in Italian that she could speak English as well, and she invited him to dine with her and her family, so that he was not alone. Leave it to Francina to show generosity to a complete stranger, especially to an Englishman as good-looking as Troy was, with his sexy accent. She liked that he made an effort to communicate with her in Italian. Not many foreigners, yet alone Americans, would have gone out of their way to do that. Troy followed Francina to her home, where she introduced him to her family. He shook hands with Francina's father, Marco, and her mother, Martina. He also got to know her cousins, Elisa, Paolo, and Natalia, as well as her maternal grandparents, Rosa Maria and Giuseppe. Francina did not have any siblings, so her cousins were like the siblings she'd never had. Troy was an only child as well, so this was the first thing that bonded them, as something they had in common. Despite Marco's protectiveness of his only daughter, interacting with a man who was not Italian, he still got along with Troy, as did the rest of the family. Troy was a pleasant guest, and he was able to tell the family about who he was. They were impressed by his academic background and his flawless Italian, which eased the initial tensions between them when they encouraged him to speak English to them. Francina was impressed by Troy's ability to charm her family, and for the first time in her life, she fell in love without even realizing it. He charmed his way into her heart, and she wanted to make sure he never forgot. So, when dinner was over and he was getting ready to leave, Francina walked Troy out and thanked him for his company. "I hope to see you again sometime soon," she said. "I'll see what I can do." He gave her that unforgettable smile before he left, and Francina sighed as she thought about the handsome man who came into her home that night and stole her heart away. As a 17-year-old girl, she'd never felt this way about anyone until she laid eyes on Troy. Now, it's been a whole year since that memorable night when she met him, and Francina was eager to marry Troy. She was 18, and he was 23, so she was not too young to get married. This was a time when it was the norm for women to wed at a young age, and Francina's family strongly believed that she was old enough to fall in love and marry. In their eyes, she was no longer a little girl. Marco realized this when Troy came over last week and asked for his permission to marry his beautiful, precious daughter. He trusted and loved Troy enough to consider him to be the son that he'd never had. And he eventually offered the young man his blessing to wed Francina. The next day, Martina and Rosa Maria accompanied Troy to the jewelry store to find the most beautiful ring for Francina, which took them an hour until he found the perfect one. When Troy realized how expensive it cost, he was unsure if it was worth it to spend abundant pocket money on a ring that Francina might not appreciate later in life. He was not employed at the moment, so this would pose a potential financial threat. Rosa Maria, giving him a sympathetic smile, suggested, "I suppose it would be better if you could just give her mine instead." She took off her ring and gave it to him. "Her grandfather gave this to me, which I also gave to her mother here. And now I'm giving it to you to give to her. This ring is a symbol of love in our family, and I have no doubt that you'll make her happy." Troy examined the ring before he could accept it. "Are you sure, Signora?" he asked. Rosa Maria nodded in response as a tear fell down her eye. Martina held her mother's hand. She could tell this was an emotional decision for her mother to make, for the sake of her lovely daughter. Martina said, "Real love does not cost anything. The gift you give must come straight from the heart. Francina shall treasure this all the days of her life. This we are certain of. Rosa Maria had brought her ring's jewelry box with her to secure the ring for the time being. The three of them thanked the store owner for her time before they departed, and Troy's decision was set. He was going to propose to Francina that evening during dinner. That evening, Francina was wearing a lovely aqua blue dress, looking as stunning as ever. She was elated to see Troy join her for dinner, for two at her house. And here he was, dressed in a suit and tie. She didn't know it, but he had the ring in his pocket for safekeeping. He would take it out during dessert time, but for now, it was time to enjoy the main course, while a musician that her mother hired played gentle, romantic music on the piano. When it was time for dessert, the maid came to collect their dinner plates so that the cook could serve the tiramisu and panna cotta. Francina's favorite dessert since childhood was panna cotta, so it was a miracle that the cook could read her mind by providing her favorite dessert. The main course wasn't all that bad either, but the dessert was the best part. Troy held Francina's hand and gazed lovingly into her chocolate brown eyes. "Have I ever told you how beautiful you looked tonight?" he asked in a smooth voice that caused her heart to beat. "You tell me that all the time," she replied with a giggle. "Well, that is the truth, and I'll never let you forget it. I love you, Francina. I can't explain it, but you mean the world to me. I've never met a woman as beautiful as you. I never felt this way about anyone else before, if you can believe it." Francina smiled. She believed it. He was her first and only. "I love you too, Troy. I love to spend time with you. And I love how happy you make my family. Their happiness is important to me, too. Thank you for opening my eyes and my heart to see what true love is. I do what I do best." He grinned as he made his bold move by getting down on one knee and taking out the ring. "And this is the best thing I'll ever do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Francina. I know your family must think that you're much too young, but for me this feels right. I don't wish to wait a minute longer. Life is short and precious. Precious, just like you." A tear of joy ran down Francina's face. For a second, she thought she was dreaming, but she was not. This was reality. Troy Edwards was really proposing to her. "Troy," she began. "Shh, don't say anything yet. I love you with all my heart, Francina. Your family has been generous and kind to me, especially your father. He gave me his blessing to ask for your hand in marriage. He loves you and is rather protective of you, which is a great thing, because it means that you come from a loving family who want nothing but the best for you. They can agree that I'm the best for you, right? So, what do you say, Francina Tutiliogi? will you make me the happiest man in the world and be my wife?" Another tear ran down Francina's face as she glanced down at the ring. She recognized it as her grandmother's ring, and it was a family treasure. Rosa Maria had handed it down to Martina, and Martina decided to give it to Troy to give to Francina. Touched by the beauty of the ring, Francina had no choice but to say yes to forever. Yes, yes, 1,000,000 times yes. She squealed with joy as he put the ring on her finger. Troy announced. She said yes, everybody. Her family arrived in the kitchen to congratulate the young couple. They had organized this dinner so that Francina and Troy could share a private moment with each other as he proposed to her. She just made him the happiest man alive by saying yes. For the rest of the week, after that memorable evening, Francina and her family began preparing for the wedding. Troy's family and friends flew in from England so that they could be there for him. Now, the two families were eager to celebrate their children's eternal bliss. The night before the big day, Francina sat up in bed as she glanced at Troy's photo on her nightstand, reminiscing about the first time she met him, and her fears were eased. Everything was going to be perfect. She woke up in a blissful mood the next morning. A bright and beautiful Saturday. That morning, her family was cheerful as they worked with the photographers and makeup artists to capture as many photos of the bride-to-be as possible. Marco and Giuseppe decided to head to the church to inform the priest that they were getting Francina ready for the occasion. And they stayed in the church with the priest and incoming guests for the ceremony. The women remained in the house with Francina, along with her cousins, for moral support as she wore her elegant, long-sleeved, V-neck lace gown. It was an original, nothing like what her mother, grandmother, or aunts had worn before. Rosa Maria couldn't contain her emotions as she wept at the sight of her stunning granddaughter. She told Francina, "Sei una sposa bellissima. You make a beautiful bride." Francina, flattered by the compliment, gave her grandmother a hug. "Nonna, non piangere. Se piangi, mi farai piangere anche tu." Grandma, don't cry. If you cry, you'll make me cry too. Rosa Maria told Francina that she'd see her downstairs after her cousin, Elisa, helped her with her necklace. After Rosa Maria left, Elisa went to her room to find a more stylish necklace for Francina. In the moment that her cousin and grandmother left, and Francina was alone in her room, Francina went up to the window to open it so that she could get some fresh air in her room. It was supposed to be a very warm afternoon, but then she felt someone shove her in the back, causing her to stumble backward onto the window, shattering it. And she screamed as she fell many feet from the window to the ground. Elisa returned to her room, dumbstruck when she saw the shattered glass and peered out at her injured cousin on the ground and cried out in terror. Francina, Rosa Maria, and the others came running to the room. Cosa è successo? Rosa Maria asked Elisa, seeking to know what happened. Elisa replied, sobbing, "E Francina, è caduta dalla finestra." It's Francina. She fell out the window. Everyone gasped in shock and horror as they came up to the room, glanced at the remains of the broken glass window on the floor. Martina called 911 to report that her daughter had fallen out of the window. She offered to stay behind with Francina until help arrived, while Rosa Maria and the other women volunteered to go to the church to break the shocking news to Marco, Giuseppe, and even Troy. The wedding would have to be postponed for now. Everything happened within minutes. Paramedics came to transport Francina to the hospital, and the family was left reeling from the shocking news. Even Troy was devastated that such an unfortunate thing could happen to the woman that he loved, who he was supposed to share the rest of his life with. Now it wasn't to be. Instead, she was fighting for her life, not knowing whether she would make it or not. The doctors told the family that Francina had suffered significant head injuries and broken bones, so they were going to perform emergency surgery on her to save her life. In the meantime, investigators were around to examine the fall, to determine how she could have fallen out the window. A week later, Francina was in the process of recovering from the surgery, and her family became devoted to caring for her, including Troy. Although they did not get married as planned, he was still determined to take care of her, as if she was his wife. That's how much he loved her, and how much he was willing to stick by her through the thick and thin, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. The vows he was following before he actually had a chance to say, "I do," to her. A week later, Francina was still in the process of recovery. That night, as she was about to wash her face in the bathroom before heading to bed, she couldn't help but overhear the conversation taking place downstairs in the living room. She heard Elisa sobbing uncontrollably, and the others comforting her. "Va bene, Elisa," Martina reassured her, telling her that everything was going to be okay. "No, non lo è," Elisa replied in between her sobs. "È tutta colpa mia. Ho spinto Francina apposta. Vedi, volevo ferirla, perché sono così gelosa di lei. Ottiene sempre tutto ciò che vuole. E ora sta per sposarsi con un uomo che ama. Non è giusto, perché che mi dici di me? Non posso farci niente se provo così tanto risentimento nei suoi confronti. Per l'amor del cielo, ha solo 18 anni. Elisa had just practically confessed to having pushed Francina out of the window deliberately while her cousin was alone in the room. She was supposed to help Francina put on her necklace, but instead, she ended up pushing her out the window instead. She wanted to hurt Francina, having always been jealous of her for whatever reason, believing that Francina always got everything she wanted, especially now that she was bound to marry the man that she loved, Troy Edwards. Elisa said she couldn't help the resentment that she'd apparently always felt toward Francina, and now she's trying to justify it by saying that Francina's the one getting married at only 18. Elisa was 23, the same age as Troy, and she herself was single and unattached. Men tended to gravitate more toward Francina than to her, or at least that's how she felt. That was a criminal confession in a nutshell. Francina wanted to go down and confront Elisa, but her weakened condition made her too tired to engage in any yelling. She'd yell at her tomorrow. Instead, she gave Troy a phone call to explain everything to him, and she asked him to report this to the authorities the next morning, which he agreed to do. This was her plan of revenge against Elisa, turning her in. When Francina woke up the next morning, Martina offered to help her downstairs to the kitchen for a nice breakfast. She asked her daughter, "Come ti senti stamattina?" wanting to know how Francina was feeling. "Sto bene, grazie, mamma," Francina replied, saying that she was feeling fine. Rosa Maria gave Francina her dish of eggs and toast, as well as a cup of orange juice, smiling adoringly at her brave granddaughter, who was handling all this with grace. "Grazie mille, nonna. Di niente, amor mio." Rosa Maria gave her a kiss on the forehead to say, "You're welcome, my love." At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and the officers called out for Elisa. Elisa introduced herself to them as they informed her that she was officially charged with assault toward Francina by shoving her out the window. Elisa sobbed, apologizing profusely to Francina and the others, although there was very little her apologies could do now. With delightful smiles, the whole family watched her being escorted by law enforcement. And for the first time in her life, Francina felt victorious toward her bitter, vengeful cousin, who was now going to face the consequences of her terrible actions. The silent car. Sarah slid through the closing subway doors just in time, glancing through the windows at the platform, happy to be heading home. The soft chime alerted the passengers that the train was leaving her stop. She sunk into the closest seat, feeling the cold plastic chill her legs through her jeans, sighing as she rubbed at her tired eyes with her palms. It felt good to finally sit down after such a long day. Her body lurched gently as she was transported through the underground tunnel. She had a long ride, even with the trains running express after midnight, and all she wanted to do was sleep. Her usual routine involved reading books to stay awake on her commute home, but even holding her book felt like too much work tonight. The car was silent, but there were more people than she would have expected. There must have been some kind of event because usually the only other people taking her subway this late at night were the kind that you had to worry about. But they looked like regular people, just a few stragglers making their way back home. Glancing around, she noticed the other passengers were seated quietly, probably just as tired as her. Their eyes were fixed blankly ahead on the seat in front of them, or watching the dark, steady blur of the tunnel pass by outside of the train windows. Sarah settled in for the long ride, slumping deeper into her seat. She opened her book, staring intently at the first paragraph. She willed the comprehension of the words to come to her, but the words just looked like symbols, refusing to form meaning in her brain. Sarah sighed, closing her book again. She glanced up, making eye contact with a middle-aged woman across the row. Automatically, she turned her gaze away, but something felt off. The woman was still looking at her, gripping a handbag on her lap. Sarah snuck another peek, wondering what this lady's problem was. Her eyes were open, but she was staring past Sarah, at the space where she sat, motionless. Feeling uneasy, Sarah leaned forward slightly. Are you okay?" Sarah called out gently. The woman looked like a statue, not blinking or moving. Its urgency cut through Sarah's tiredness. No response. Sarah felt her cheeks get hot, as she tended to flush red when she was nervous. This was weird, in a bad way. She turned to the next person she could see, finding a college-aged young man beside her. He wore baggy jeans and had a big pair of earphones around his neck. His eyes were fixed forward with the same vacant stare. Her voice shook now. "Hello?" A cold sweat flashed across the top of her lip. She swiped at it as she stood abruptly. The book that had been in her lap tumbled to the floor. Panicked, she made her way to the next person. She checked passenger after passenger, professionally dressed men and women, younger-looking students or interns, even a woman with a little dog on her lap. Horrified, she found that the dog was frozen too. She started with polite taps and a low voice, and built up to violently shaking shoulders, pleading for someone to just say or do anything. She dreaded the same look on every face, present yet utterly absent. The lights were all on, but no one was home. The subway hit a turn, and Sarah was propelled sideways. She grabbed a rail, gripping the cool metal and using it to help her keep her balance as she rushed to the end of the car. She shot a hand out for the door handle that connected her car to the next one. Her stomach dropped as the handle refused to budge. Locked. She pounded on the glass, but the next car appeared equally motionless. The train lights flickered, and for a brief moment, she could not see as the car was plunged into darkness. She held her breath as her heart hammered against her ribs, threatening to jump out of her chest and escape. When the lights returned, her skin crawled with dread. Every passenger was now standing perfectly still, staring directly at her. She backed against the door, her mind spiraling. "Please," she whispered. She wanted to close her eyes. She couldn't, though. She was too afraid of what might happen if she looked away. Instead of words, she heard whispers. Soft at first, like the jostling and whooshing noises from the train in motion, but quickly growing louder. They filled the car, echoing unintelligible murmurs. The voices were angry, thick with accusation in her ears. What had she done to upset them? "Stop!" Sarah cried. She jammed her fingers into her ears, plugging them. It didn't help. The whispers grew louder and louder, judging her and taunting her and blaming her. For what? Suddenly, the subway jolted sharply to the right, knocking her off balance. Sarah fell. She felt herself falling for too long, waiting for the impact of the dirty car floor. She gasped sharply, jerking awake. Her head had slipped against the rail between her seat and the subway door. The train rocked as it slowed down, approaching her station. She heard the familiar subway voice announce, "This is Franklin Avenue. Transfer is available to the 2 and 3 trains." Sarah glanced around, frantic. Passengers chatted softly, scrolling through phones or listening to music. Normalcy surrounded her. Her heart still raced. She didn't trust it yet. But had it just been a dream? She took deep breaths, trying to will her panic to go down. Be calm. You are safe, she thought. Just exhausted and stressed out from work. She gathered her belongings, relieved to see her book on her lap, not scattered across the floor. As she stepped off of the train, her nose and lungs were assaulted by the belly, muggy platform air. The grimy realness of the familiar gross platform felt like it was bringing her back to reality. Her legs were a little shaky, but she was grateful to be moving, to be able to leave and put the strange nightmare behind her. Sarah made her way out of the station towards the stairs. She climbed up and out, feeling her phone vibrate. She pulled her phone out of her pocket, squinting at the notifications. Someone texted her from an unknown number. She opened the message and read, "Wake up." Sarah froze, her pulse quickening again. Anxiety surged back, sharp and biting. Her fingers trembled slightly as she glanced back toward the departing subway. She saw them again, watching her. Through the windows, all of the passengers stood motionless, facing her. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck raise and waited until the train vanished into the tunnel and the people were out of view. Sarah ran up the remaining stairs, emerging onto the street, desperate for the cool, open air and clarity. She continued to run, pumping her legs as the sense of unease lingered. She glanced repeatedly at the people passing by her on the sidewalk, wondering if they were going to have that haunting, identical expression on their faces. She made it to her walk-up apartment, sprinting up 4 flights of narrow stairs, quickly unlocking the door and shoving herself inside. Sarah double-locked the door and pressed her forehead into the wood as she looked out of the peephole. What if they followed her home? She waited, forcing herself to breathe as quietly as possible to see if they would appear at the top of the stairs on her floor. "Come on," she said out loud to herself. "Get it together." She opened her phone again, rereading the unsettling message. "Wake up," she typed back cautiously. "Who is this?" The reply was instant. "You know who. You saw us." Her breath caught in her throat, fingers gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Sarah tried to will the nightmare away, but the vacant faces, whispered accusations, and the locked subway doors all followed her. She stumbled to her window, looking down at the street below. Cars rushed past, their honking sounds reaching her window. New Yorkers moved briskly at their quick walking pace, looking like dozens of little ants with places to be. As she stared, her reflection in the window twisted subtly. For a split second, her own eyes stared back, wide and vacant, mirroring the subway passengers. Sarah gasped, jerking away from the glass. She collapsed heavily on her couch, pressing her shaking hands into the cushions to try and ground herself. There's no way that was real, she told herself. Her vision was tunneling, blurred by exhaustion and fear. Her breathing came manually. In and out, she willed herself. In and out. In and out. In and the sea witch. Clouds of ink and iron pressed against a leaden ocean. He found her waist deep in the salty waters, fingers trailing in swirling sea foam, gaze cast to the storm promised heavy on the horizon. Winds tasting of seaweed and salt brine danced in her hair, tangling through long obsidian strands and tossing them into thickening air. From the dunes, he called to her, "Fair one." His hail drifted, swallowed by crashing surf. "I seek the sea witch." Only winds stirred in answer. Slowly, her head turned ever slightly to gaze over her shoulder. From great distance, and obscured beneath wild strands of hair, her dark eyes locked to his with piercing intensity that struck his core like lightning. With a hum that rippled across the waves, she spoke. A harrowing voice of 1,000 voices burrowed deep in his mind with a cold whisper of soft honey. "Is this what they call me these days?" Her lips curled, not to a smile, but something knowing, something old. "I've heard tales of your great power," he cried, stepping closer to the waves. "Please, I seek your help." She laughed darkly from the water. great power. She tasted the words, rolling them over her tongue like foam dissolving on the shore. Thunder rumbled on the horizon. In an instant, she was before him, her face inches from his. She floated above a boiling sea, robes billowing over tumultuous waves that crashed to the shore with surging hunger. Energy crackled in the air, charged with a deep pulse that rivaled the burning winds. Her hair spiraled in silken waves before her, caressing his face, and her eyes, deep and endless, burned with intensity that could sink the largest of ships. And did they call it great? She whispered, her voice of 1,000 voices quaking earth and thrumming his bones. When they led me to the pyre, the wind howled, tearing at his clothes, the salt stinging his eyes. Did they call it great? She continued with increasing intensity. When they bound my wrists, when they fed me to the flames, he cowered before her as the sea swelled with hunger. I surely think not. She rose higher, straightening her form, bare feet brushing against churning waves. And yet, still, here they slither to me, mewling for party tricks. She looked down upon him with her chin raised. Tell me then, boy, she spat, laced with mockery. What is it that you seek? Gold? Fame? Power, perhaps? She tilted her head. A place among kings? She laughed, and sea spray pelted his skin. With a forearm, he shielded his face and cried, Please, I know not of your past, wise one. The winds raged around him. I seek a cure. My love is plagued with an illness that no medicine or healer can rid. I cannot bear to live without her. The winds slowed, the waters calmed, and slowly the sea witch descended. Her feet sunk in swirling sands beneath the surface, her dark hair to her sides. She eyed him thoughtfully, weighing his words. Cannot live without her, she echoed. Just one voice falling from her lips, in stark contrast to the thousands before. Quiet waves lapped around her calves. And this woman, she is your great love? He ignored hairs pricking on his neck as her gaze bore into him. She is everything to me. She studied him, robes billowing in soft winds. Yes, she said quietly. This I will do. Oh, thank you, he cried, falling to his knees in the water before her. She narrowed her eyes, looking down upon him. But there is always a price. Oh, yes, of course, he stammered, scrambling in his pockets. I have money. Her voice of 1,000 voices cracked like thunder. I do not deal in coins, foolish boy. The waves stirred hungrily around her feet before calming. Then, just one voice, brimming with disdain. Your debt lies with the universe. He stood up, trembling. He lifted his head to meet her fearsome gaze. For her, I will pay any price. Her lips twisted to a smile, sharp as glass. Such conviction, she murmured, almost to herself. How valiant. The softest chuckle emanated from her, like thunder rumbling on the horizon. She stepped forward, running a cold finger down his cheek. Very well then, the deal is struck. Her eyes flicked to his. A life for a life. His breath caught in his throat. With one swift movement, her hand shot to grip the back of his neck, fingers digging into his flesh as she pulled him close. The water swelled around them, ravenous and eager. She laughed, pulling him under and out to sea as he sank deeper, deeper. He thought only of his love. He thought of her laughter, bright and warm, ringing across wildflower meadows around their cottage. He thought of her smile, crooked and beautiful, and the soft hole it hitched in his chest each time she bore it. He thought of the night he fell for her, watching her dance, weaving and spinning between other party-goers beneath the hanging wisteria. She'd smiled at him, waving to come join her. He'd held up his hands, sticking to the edges. He wasn't much for dancing. If he could go back, if he could only go back, he'd join her in a heartbeat. Later, that same night, she'd led him under moonlight, dragging him by the hand through the wood to her favorite place. Come on, she'd whispered, her laughter echoing in the night. I have to show you something. She brought him to a hidden gazebo on the lily pond, where she'd kissed him, stolen and bold. The sea kissed him now, stealing air from his lungs as she had. He thrashed against its unwelcome embrace as it ran icy fingers deep into his chest. He thought of her illness, how quickly she'd waned. The doctor's cold looks of detachment that made his blood boil. How they'd came and went, pricking her and bleeding her with leeches, giving all manner of vile treatments, until one day, one of them pulled him aside. She's too far gone for further treatment, he'd said solemnly. It would be best to sort affairs. His world had shattered then. Nothing mattered but her. In blind desperation for something, anything to keep her alive, he'd ignored the warnings that heeded the whispers and sought the spell weaver, the sea witch. As she pulled him into the depths, he could only hope that it was worth it. Jolt Bailey settled into his window seat. He watched other passengers navigate the aisle with their carry-ons. He saw a pretty young woman in sweats making her way toward him. He thought, where have I seen her? He knew they hadn't met. With hardly a glance, she slid into the seat next to him, strapped herself in, and focused on her cell phone. Bailey stared out the window at airport staff prepping the jet for takeoff. Flying was a necessary evil for him. Its charms had faded years ago, but long overdue. He needed this trip. Hearing laughter, he turned toward the woman. The cause of her humor eluded him. Sensing his attention, she turned. "Can I help you? I'm sorry. I heard you laugh, and I was curious. Not that it's any of your business. I got a text from my agent." "You're right. None of my business." She turned away. Bailey said, "I know this sounds stupid, but do I know you? You look so familiar." Suppressing annoyance, she sighed. "You're asking me if you know me? Oh, for the good old days of trite pickup lines. No, really, I'm not. I wouldn't, not with that line." He laughed. "But no, I'm married, not hitting on you. But I could swear," she sighed. "You watch TV? I was in a movie last season." "Ah, right. Okay, cool. Sorry to bother you." Seeking distraction, he fiddled with the video display. Flight attendants worked their way up the aisle. They checked the overheads and confirmed that everyone was securely strapped in. The captain made announcements. Bailey checked his cell phone. An attendant asked him to shut it off until after takeoff. "Of course," he said. He placed it into his jacket pocket. All had settled. The plane began to taxi. Bailey corrected his perception that the exterior was moving and not the plane. Gets me every time. Once airborne, I can relax. The plane paused and then continued rolling forward. The woman turned to him. "I didn't mean to be short with you before. Nervous flyer. I'd usually be flattered if someone recognized me. You didn't do anything wrong." Bailey smiled. "Not a problem. I imagine fans wanting attention can wear thin. Someday, maybe. But hasn't happened yet. You're one of the few who's actually recognized me." "Okay then. Hi. I promise not to stalk you." They laughed. She said, "I'm Magnolia. Are you vacationing? Work trip? Glad to meet you." "I'm Bailey." "Nope. Off to see my kids. Hopefully reconcile with my wife." "Long story." "You? Getting married?" She displayed her ring for him to admire. It was huge. The plane accelerated. This was Bailey's favorite part. Lift off. All that drama. And suddenly, the earth falling away. Bailey's separation from Irene and his twin girls defied explanation. He didn't understand it, nor did she. After 2 years apart, but with non-stop communications, they'd decided to try again. Step by step, once airborne, people relaxed. Some stood waiting for a restroom. Attendants served refreshments. Bailey nodded to Magnolia, who nodded back and looked away. A few minutes later, she became visibly agitated. "What's that sound? I don't hear anything odd." "You don't? Is that smoke coming from the wing?" "No. We're going through clouds." Her anxiety seemed to pass. Bailey tried reading. He stared out. Clouds and terrain passed beneath them. He thought about his family. The girls were getting big, about to start school. He dozed. A jolt spilled his water. Someone screamed. Magnolia grabbed the armrest. Bailey thought, air pocket. Normal. With another jolt, the engine sounded ragged. The jet rolled, and more screams followed intense turbulence. Someone fell. People braced themselves. The loudspeakers squawked noise, but no information. Bailey secured his seatbelt and saw Magnolia now crouched in a fetal position. Bailey touched her shoulder. "You okay?" she said. "Yes." "No." "No. I'm a mess. Can I do something?" "No. It's too late. There's nothing. No one." Barely able to hear her, he held her shoulder. She babbled. He said, "Talk to me. I can listen." She stared with wild eyes. The jolts increased. She gasped, "I doubt you." "You have no idea," he agreed. Holding his gaze, she leaned in. "My life's a shambles. I've hurt too many people, used them, betrayed their trust, ruined lives. I stole things." He tried to relate. "I'm no saint. You don't get it. Can't. Not talking about a lapse or some white lie, but a pattern. Committed crimes. Horrible." Looking down, she steeled herself. "This trip. Wanted to make amends. No time now. Need to tell someone." She squeezed his hand. The plane shifted, and they held on to each other. Everyone was screaming. Overhead compartments opened. Luggage rained into the aisle. It felt like the plane was breaking up. He held his focus. Shouting, he said, "You want me to listen? Let me let it out." She sobbed. "I've been vicious. Left people broken in the gutter. Inexcusable." He recoiled, but increasing her grip, she pulled him closer. "Did you? Shut up! Listen, can't die with this weight pressing." He pulled her closer, comforting her as much as possible. Eyes closed, their foreheads touched. They found a moment of peace amid the swirling chaos. "Thank you for putting up with me. Needed this. I love you. Love you too. For what it's worth." "Shh, don't talk. Nothing to say." With another jolt, something changed. Relief. The noise and chaos subsided. And so did the panic. Another jolt generated more screams. Then a collective sigh as the plane settled into stable flight. Soon, the captain announced preparations to land. Everyone needed to stow loose items and fasten seatbelts. Attendants assisted an injured passenger. Trying to compose himself, Bailey struggled to digest the last hour. He only wanted to see his family. The landing was uneventful. Everyone cheered when wheels touched down. Passengers lined up to begin disembarking. Magnolia stood into the aisle. She didn't look back. Bailey joined the throng behind her. He touched her shoulder. She turned. He said, "I wanted to say about what happened back there." "Oh, that? Forget it. Acting 101. Just an exercise learned in improv class." Stunned, he said, "What?" "I made it up. I'm an actor. Get it?" It took a moment to comprehend what she'd said. Right. Of course. That was it. She turned away. They didn't speak again. He set his jaw and dug his fingers into the upholstery of the seat beside him. He shut his eyes. Who does that? Whatever she'd done or not, they'd had a real moment. Two people bonded, healed. He didn't care about Magnolia's flaws or crimes, but calling that an acting exercise, Bailey felt violated. Whatever her crimes, this was worse. She's covering, hopes I won't say anything. Plausible deniability, my ass. Bailey reeled from the last hour. He'd never felt such intimacy. Her casual dismissing of it appalled him. Still jittery from the horrible flight, he felt empty. Acting 101? Really? What a load of crap. Passing the flight attendants and pilot at the exit, he thanked them. Once off the plane, they walked toward baggage claim, each playing the role of the strangers they were. Not enough distance. Descending on the escalator, he saw them and waved. His daughters broke from their mother and ran screaming to him. Each embraced a leg. Holding tight, laughing, Irene approached with a big smile. Embracing, they felt like family. "Welcome back. How was your flight?" "Rough. But I'm here. I'm okay." She kissed him. "I'm glad." They embraced again. Over Irene's shoulder, he saw Magnolia kissing her fiancé. Their eyes met. Smiling, she looked away. Bailey looked at her future husband. Poor sap. The crowd surged as the baggage carousel rumbled. He went to it and awaited his luggage. Reaching for his suitcase, he bumped into Magnolia, also reaching for his bag. He said, "This one's mine. Check the tag." She hesitated and stepped back. "You're right. Sorry." He hoisted the bag onto its wheels and walked to join his family. Nothing more to say. Rancor, burning, running down the train's aisle. Sable had to try her best to avoid people. Unfortunately, she had to push some people out the way, praying to whoever was listening that she hadn't hurt them. That's not what she wanted. She took one quick moment to look back, only to see the strange man in black still chasing her. Letting out a frustrated groan, she moved her focus back to the path in front of her, fast enough to see the upcoming obstacle, the dinner cart. Every afternoon at 1 p.m., one of the staff members would bring around the lunch cart. Sable was many a time excited to see this, but today was a different story. It now stood between her and her life. God damn it! She had to think fast. Looking to the sides, she thought about maybe climbing the seats, but she thought better of it. it would take too long to scramble over them. No, the only way was over the cart. Someone was definitely going to get hurt this time. The lady that was serving lunch bent down to get something for someone from under the trolley. This was her chance. She placed her first foot on the poor lady's back, shouting an apology as shocked gasps were let out around her. Her other foot landed steadily on the top of the cart, jumping down. She landed on 2 feet, but wobbled forward, steadying herself on the arms of the chairs in front of her. But she knew she couldn't stop. Looking back again, she noticed the man in black was now fighting with people beyond the cart, smiling to herself, knowing this would but her. Sometime she kept going. When she got to the connecting door, she frantically pushed the release button. The door whizzed open. Scrambling inside, relief flooded her body when the door sealed behind her. It was only when she turned that she found herself in an empty carriage. Panic set in again when she realized that there was nowhere to hide in here. She knew her only option was to make it to the next carriage and hope to everything good that there would be somewhere to hide in there. But Sable only made it halfway to the door when the whole train jerked violently. So much so that it threw her off balance and she stumbled to the floor. To make matters even worse, as she was starting to stand up, all the lights completely shut out. Her first thought was that the energy field that kept the train safe out here in space had failed. If she wasn't terrified before, she was now for a completely different reason. Hearing the whiz of the door that she had just come through, she spun around to face it. But the darkness of the carriage was too much for her to even see her hand in front of her face, squinting as if that would make it easier for her to see. A white, hot flash lit up the entire carriage. It was only a second, but she could hear the strange man's hurried footsteps coming towards her. She knew she had to move forward as quickly as she could. Without knocking herself out, she felt for the sides of the carriage. She listened and heard the footsteps stop. Now the only sound was heavy breathing from both parties. She didn't know what to do. Her mind was racing too fast. She could make a run towards where she thought the other door was to the joining carriage. But what if she tripped or ran into something? Then the strange man in black would definitely know where she was. Just like before, there was a 1-second flash of hot white light. She caught a glimpse of the man who now stood in front of her, in the middle where she was once stood. Although this time, he was facing the wrong way. And so, luckily, he didn't see where she was this time. Lightning. That's what the flashes were. It must have been a power surge that had stopped the train. At least, that was one less thing to worry about. This was like a nightmare. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, a red glow of the emergency lights just above Sable's head flashed on her face. She couldn't move. She was frozen in place, like a statue. He would surely see her now. She wished for the lights to go back out before he turned, but it was too late. Looking back, she saw the man was now staring right at her. The look on his face said everything that Sable needed to know. Panic set in again, and she tried to think of what to do, how to get out of this, but her brain was scrambled. The man started to charge, seeing her life flash before her eyes. And that's when it came to her. A month earlier, she had been running from the man in black for the first time. Ever since she had boarded the train at Lorth, she had felt like someone was watching her, which then had escalated to her finding out that someone was definitely following her. She had sneaked onto the train, more than ready to start her new life. 2 years ago, she had seen off her twin brother, Sky, and his partner, Jess, who were to travel to Rancor first. Sable had to stay behind to sort out some debts before she left Lorth, which was easier said than done. It was when she started to rank in more debts that she decided that she was done. She missed her brother, and so she would get on the light train no matter what. She tried to hurry down the aisle, but she didn't want to bring any more attention to herself than what she already was. Sliding into the first available seat she came across, she sunk into the fabric, trying to make herself as small as possible. She suitably looked back from the side of the seat to see a strange guy, all in black, stop at the threshold of the carriage, scanning every seat, but not moving forward. Running from someone? Turning quickly to where the voice had come from, she hadn't noticed that she had sat in one seat of 4 that had a table in the middle. A man was sat directly in front of her. He slowly put down the book that he had been reading. His hair was a lightish, mousy brown and shoulder length. Sable noticed it had a slight wave to it. "No, I just thought I heard the dinner cart." She tried a smile, but she was still out of breath from running. Liar. The stranger leaned forward, placing both his elbows on the table that separated them. "You were running from someone. You tried to make it not noticeable, at which you failed miserably at. It was quite amusing, actually. Besides, the lunch cart only comes around at 1 p.m. sharp. Has done for the past 2 weeks we've been on this train." Sable squinted at the man as he smirked at her. She could have sworn that as he bared his teeth, she saw 2 fangs at either side. "So what are you going to do? We're only 2 weeks into our year-long journey to Rancor. You don't know how far you can run in this tin can. They're going to catch up with you soon enough." Sable looked to the side, trying to avoid the question. This was the first window Sable had come across on the train. Hiding in the luggage compartment, had no way to see outside, and she hadn't really had time to concentrate on her surroundings while running. She didn't know what planet they were passing, but it was beautiful. Past the energy field that surrounded the train, that shimmered of iridescent pinks and yellows. The massive planet just beyond them was a tan color, Its clouds were splodges of bright orange and dark pink. The ring that spanned around the planet was made of rock pieces that were all different shapes and sizes. Sable had to bring herself back to her reality. "I'll be fine." Looking around again, with panic streaming through her veins, she had forgot that the strange man was still looking for her. "Well, stranger, my name is Wilder, and I'm going to Rancor to start a new life of peace and hopefully happiness. How about you?" She was only half listening, more focused on trying to wait for any opening she could so she could make a run for it. Just when she thought she would have to stay in the seat a bit longer, the man in black got distracted by something behind him. Getting up out of her seat, she went to pass the stranger that she had only just caught him saying his name was Wilder. She wasn't trying to be rude, but she had no time to make friends right now. But as she went to pass him, he grabbed her arm gently. "Look, I don't have time to chat right now. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me go." And so he did, going back casually to reading his book, but not without saying one last time, "Good luck. Whistle if you need any help." Confused at what he was implying, she knew she shouldn't be wasting this opportunity to run. Looking to check the man in black was still distracted, she finally took off down the rest of the carriage. She did it without even thinking, pursued her lips together. She whistled. The strange man who had started to lunge at her again stopped dead in his tracks, looking almost frightened. A look which faded almost instantaneously. She brought her right arm up to defend her face, but the blow never came. Lowering her arm, she looked around her to find the man in black was now crumpled in a ball at the far left wall. Light filled the carriage again, and it was like time stopped. "You whistled." The man that now stood in front of her, like a ghost, she remembered was named Wilder, the same one she had met about a month ago. "How did you—" "What? Never mind about that now." He grabbed her wrist gently and tugged her towards the door that led into the next carriage. "We need to leave before someone discovers he's dead." Wilder had dragged her through 2 carriages before she stopped him. They were now in what looked like a kitchen area, and her eyes went straight to a knife block that sat on the counter behind where Wilder stood. He turned to see what she was looking at. "Don't even think about it. I'm here to help you. Need I remind you, I just saved your life." He stood across from her, his hand raised and finger pointed at her like he was telling off a naughty child. "I wasn't. They just caught my attention, that's all." Wilder looked at her like he didn't believe a word she was saying. And to be fair to him, she couldn't blame him. They both leaned back on the counters, seeming to relax a little and to get their breaths back. "You never answered my question." She looked up at him. This was the first time she was actually taking his image in. He was tall and slim, but he had some muscle to him. He wore slim black pants and a tan, round-necked t-shirt that was covered by a black leather jacket. His eyes were what stood out the most to Sable, though. They were the lightest blue, with little specks of green in them. Sable, my name's Sable, and I'm going to Rancor to reunite with my brother, Sky. Wilder gave her another wild smile, and once again, she caught sight of Fangs. He'd crossed his arms over his chest. Wasn't so hard, was it? Sable rolled her eyes and started to walk again. That was a thank you for saving my life. Everyone was gathered in carriages that were purely made of glass. Sable worked out fairly quickly that these rooms were made for passengers. First look at Rancor. It was an exciting event, looking at your future paradise for the first time. Sable and Wilder has spent the rest of the months on the light train, getting to know each other. He wasn't as bad as she first thought. He was funny and insightful, and after months of spending every day with him, she started to feel something for him. They both stood in the middle of the carriage. People crammed in around them. They were all waiting for the final jump. There was something I didn't tell you. Sable turned to Wilder, not expecting him to look so sheepish. What is it? I don't think the strange man in black was after you. Sable's eyebrows furrowed, and her head tilted when she spoke. What do you mean? She didn't understand. Why was he bringing this up now? They had rid themselves of that man many months ago. He was after me. He was a shadow stalker. Sable laughed. Shadow stalkers were something of legend. They hunted down and killed an ancient race of vampires. But all those stories were now like Chinese whispers. Ha, good one. But his face was still stone cold. She'd never seen Wilder like this. But vampires don't exist. Wilder, stop being silly. We're supposed to be having a good moment. They do exist. I do exist. Sable, unconsciously, took a step away from him, just as the light train jumped, and everyone around them started to cheer. But they were only looking at each other. Confusion crossed her face when she came to a realization. The fangs, when you smile. Wait. But if he was after you all this time, then why did it seem like he was always following me? Wilder tried to walk towards her, but Sable just took another step back. Because it was me who was following you, which in turn meant that he was only technically following you. Her breath started to quicken, but she was suddenly distracted by the intense orange glow that was reflecting in Wilder's eyes. She hadn't even noticed that she hadn't been paying attention to anything but the man, if you could even call him that, in front of her. Turning quickly, the screams and sobbing of everyone around her filled her ears. It took Sable a few moments to adjust to what she was looking at. The planet in front of them, their new start, their new home, was entirely in flames. Orange flames, like veins, ran around the whole planet. They had been told that Rancor would be blooming with greens and purples, even from the outside. But now, all they saw were red and blacks. Sable didn't know when she had reached for Wilder's hand, but the only thing she could feel was his gentle squeezes to keep her grounded. Everything she had just found out was forgotten. Everyone around them were running around, crying and freaking out. Some were on their knees, heads in their hands, and their bodies shaking. Wilder would never get his life of freedom, and Sable would never see her twin again. Lucien in the sky with diamonds. I really should have realized how vindictive Heather could be. What is that saying? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. When she found out I was seeing someone else and had traded her in for the other woman, a younger, prettier model, I just know that it was that very moment that she decided to exact her revenge. Unfortunately, Heather knows all of my secrets, including the biggest one of all, the fact that I am a world-renowned jewel thief who has recently completed one of the largest heists of the century, the theft of the Weatherby diamonds. Yes, I stole the necklace quite smoothly and easily from its display case at the art museum. I won't go into all of the meticulous details of how I managed to pull off the job. Let's just say that I know exactly what I'm doing, and I plan everything to the nth degree. All of my operations normally run like a well-oiled machine. That is, if no one interferes with my flow. But no, Heather just had to throw a monkey wrench into my work. I have to take ownership of it, however. It was entirely my own fault. I got careless for a brief moment and let my guard down. One night when I was feeling quite loose and relaxed, admittedly, I had also drunk too much wine. I had bragged to her of my prowess as a jewel thief. I probably also promised her the moon and stars at the time. Later, of course, when I dumped her, she used that information to cook my goose. I just know that she squealed on me and is responsible for my current predicament. I am now on an Air France flight, ready to depart to my native Paris, sweating like a pig because I'm afraid that I've been spotted by the cops. I just know that it's Heather who told. Why else would I be targeted this way? I have always been one to remain incognito, to fly under the radar, so to speak. Thus, the only logical conclusion I can arrive at is that she is the one who turned me in. Now the cops are surely out to get me. They are at this very moment rapidly approaching my seat. The Weatherby diamonds are set with precision into a choker valued at several $million. A choker that I am now wearing as I sit here prepared for takeoff. The necklace is currently living up to its name. It is choking me under a somewhat baggy black turtleneck. I despise turtlenecks, hate the way they press up against your neck. I opted for the loosest turtleneck possible, but it still presses up uncomfortably against my neck. The combination of the choker necklace and the turtleneck are almost more than I can bear. I wear the turtleneck under an equally baggy hoodie so no one can spot the necklace. Normally, I prefer my clothes to conform to my trim body like a glove. My sartorial senses are offended by this sloppy but choking attire. Who would ever wear a turtleneck with a hoodie? Unfortunately, I really have no choice. My outfit was not chosen for fashion. It does, however, allow me to sail through airport security without being stopped. The plan is, once I land in Paris, I will meet with a high-end jewelry broker who will give me top dollar for the jewels. I will be Hashon for life. That is, if I get away with it. I am afraid that the police are right now, at this very moment, making their way to the back of the plane where I am sitting. My seat on the jumbo jet, like my clothes, has also been carefully selected. I am in the second to last row and am seated on the aisle. I chose this seat so that I can make a quick exit to the restroom if needed and dump the jewels somewhere in the tiny closet of the restroom. We haven't taken off yet, and the flight attendant has just made the standard announcement about how we need to remain seated with our seat belts on and our trays in the upright position. Right after she says that, I spot the blue uniformed policeman making his way back towards me. With no time to waste, I disregard the stewardess's explicit directions and quickly shove my tray to the upright position. I then dash inside the tiny cubicle of a restroom before anyone can stop me. I shut the door firmly and pull the lever to lock the door. I really need to find a hiding spot for the necklace. I can't afford to be caught with it. I don't want to flush it down the toilet. I would be, in effect, flushing all of my hopes and dreams away. Instead, I need to stash the necklace somewhere so I can somehow later retrieve it. I quickly pull my hoodie off, followed by my turtleneck. With fumbling fingers, I fiddle with the silver clasp until the necklace falls off into my hands. Next, I carefully place the necklace in the paper towel dispenser behind the wad of folded paper towels. As I do this, my heart racing, I hear a sharp knock on the plasticine door that folds in like an accordion. "Monsieur?" the flight attendant inquires. She swiftly changes to English, but speaks with a strong French accent. "The plane is ready for takeoff. We need you to return to your seat now and put your seatbelt on, please," she says in a firm but polite voice. "Pardon, mademoiselle. I really need to use the facilities. I will be out directly." I run the water in the sink to make my act convincing and hurriedly wipe my hands with just one paper towel, taking care not to use too many so that the necklace remains hidden in the dispenser. I drop the used paper towel in the wastebasket and then don my turtleneck and hoodie once again. With 2 layers on in the tiny, airless washroom, I am now sweating more than ever. No matter, I tell myself, taking a deep breath in an effort to remain cool. At least, I am no longer choking. My throat feels slightly better, although the turtleneck still irritates me. I quickly push open the door and return to my aisle seat, where I dutifully pull my seatbelt across my lap and try to appear cool and collected. The policeman approaches me, his shiny badge glinting in the morning sun streaming through the small windows. "Mr. Martin?" He pronounces Martin in the American way, rather than the way I prefer it. Martine. My passport says I am Lucien Martin, although it is not my real name. My passport, which is fake, says I am a French citizen. When in America, however, I have a California driver's license that proclaims me to be Luke Martin. I have deliberately chosen a name that is very common, both in French and English. In every aspect of my life, I need to blend in and remain unmemorable. "Yes," I answer politely. "Please stand up. We need to do a pat search on you." "Pat search?" I repeat indignantly. "What are you looking for?" I am not at liberty to say. But with the Patriot Act, we have the right to search any and all air passengers at will. The cop says firmly. "Patriot Act? Do you think I am a terrorist?" I say this quite loudly. I hear a collective gasp from my fellow passengers, who are understandably alarmed, hearing nothing other than the word terrorist. "I sincerely hope not, sir," the cop said smoothly. "Just doing my job." I let out a tremendous sigh. "Go ahead. Do your job. Pat away." The cop uses bladed hands to do a thorough pat search, running his hands smoothly up and down my sides. He searches my pant pockets and instructs me to remove my hoodie. I do so, laughing inside. I didn't want to wear the hoodie anyways. After several long minutes, the cop finally stops his fruitless search, finding nothing. "Okay, sir," he says finally. "You have been cleared." He walks to the front of the plane, where he presumably has to talk to the captain. "This plane is cleared for takeoff," he announces to the male attendant standing at the front of the plane. As he does that, I glance towards the back of the plane to see the reaction from the other flight attendant, the lady who had tried to shoo me out of the washroom. To my surprise, she quickly enters the washroom and pulls the door firmly shut behind her. My heart sinks. My plan had been to quickly visit the head once again and retrieve the jewels before anyone else entered. I haven't seen anyone else, apart from the stewardess, use the restroom. I have been carefully watching, in between dealing with the nosy policeman. Now, I pray it isn't too late. Several long moments pass, and the flight attendant finally exits the restroom. I quickly unbuckle my seatbelt and hurry back there. I frantically pull the door shut behind me and shove my hand into the narrow slot of the paper towel dispenser. I feel around with my fingers, my heart sinking. The necklace is gone. With shaking hands and fury coursing through my veins, I return to my seat. As I do so, I catch sight of the petite, blonde flight attendant who had entered the washroom before me. She gives me a Mona Lisa smile and tells me once again that I need to buckle my seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. I smile back and raise my eyebrows at her flirtatiously. "Certainly, mademoiselle. I'll buckle up right away. I can hardly wait to get to Paris." "But of course," she responds in her charming French accent. "Paris is the city of light." I vow to myself that once I reach Paris, I will tail the flight attendant and somehow try to overpower her, either by brute force or with my relentless charm. A gentleman jewel thief's job is never done, I tell myself. I need to retrieve the diamonds at all costs. They are my ticket to the good life. The plane's engine roars as if feels my strong determination. The giant silver bird speeds down the runway and triumphantly takes to the sky. At last, the blonde flight attendant moves down the plane's narrow aisle. She turns her head back towards me at the last moment and smiles mischievously. Mona Lisa no longer. "I hope you enjoy your flight, monsieur. Bon voyage." January 21st. It was another one of those days. The rain was pouring down like iron sheets. The train had come half an hour late, and I had lost my wallet in the station bathroom. In moments like these, you truly wonder whether a higher power was out to get you. When the train finally pulled up at 1:30, I glared it down. Most people would have been blown away by the pristine white sheen, the unnatural silence of the engine, or the blast of sub-zero aircon that streamed out of the open doors. But not me. 21 years of life had taught me enough about the world. I trudged onto the carriage at the end and plopped myself down on the backmost seat. If I had been just 10 years younger, no, even 2 months younger, I might have enjoyed the richness of the leather or the antique smell of the wooden armrests. But I wasn't the young fool that I once was. As we slowly pulled out of the gloomy building, I finally let out the breath I had been holding in all day. I knew where I was going, of course. I knew what I was going to do. Even without the map pasted on the chair in front of me, I knew the name of my destination in my bones. Sunset Station, where my path ended. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain clatter against the window like bullets. The last lullaby I'd ever enjoy, I supposed. I fiddled with a golden chain strung around my neck. Not even a minute passed by when someone tapped my shoulder. "Is this seat taken?" I prized my eyes open and felt my heart skip a beat. She had flawless skin, about a shade darker than sandstone. Her jet black hair cascaded down in smooth waterfalls, gently brushing against her lower back. They formed a loose curtain over her chocolate eyes, which glittered like galaxies. A burgundy jacket was draped over her shoulders, the velvet seeming softer than cat fur. Her nails were dabbed with a light layer of wine nail polish, complementing her lips. Something about her seemed oddly familiar to me, even though I'd never met her before. "Is it taken?" she repeated. Her voice was a soft jingle, a quiet chortle. I blinked. No, I let out a tiny groan when she plopped herself down, the smell of vanilla following her. The one thing I didn't want to do was engage in conversation on the tail end of my journey. So of course, it was the first thing that happened. We sat in silence for a while, the pinging of the bullets of rain making the only sound in the carriage. I glanced out the window and heaved a sigh. The same flooded fields, dreary hills, the same ashen sky. I guess it wasn't much to miss. The speakers crackled to life, interrupting my train of thought. "Welcome on board the Destiny Line. The next stop is Sunset Station, where this service ends." "Sunset, Sunset, Sunset. Are you going to Sunset Station?" the woman asked. I started and silently cursed myself. "Oh, yes, I am. Didn't mean to disturb you." I chanced a glance at her face again. Where had I seen her before? A wide grin spread, flashed across her rose lips. "That's splendid," she purred, blatantly ignoring all of the subtle hints I was dropping. As if on cue, she swiveled towards me. "I heard there's a beautiful, ethereal wooden bridge there that overlooks a waterfall. You planning on going? My journey ends there." I didn't bother elaborating. She tilted her head, studying me as if I were a helpless guinea pig. I hated that, the way her brown eyes drilled right through me and came out the other side. There was something off about her. I just couldn't place my finger on what it was. Why did it all seem so eerily familiar? "So you have gone there before," she pressed, her breath the sickening smell of peppermint. "Surely you must have gone there with someone else." "Yes." The word slipped out of my mouth like an eel slipping out of wet hands. "How delightful!" she exclaimed with a sharp giggle. "I did too." "Who did you go with?" The question was a wrecking ball. Who? Her voice was a gong, the words, the beats ringing in my mind. "My fiancé." Her stare was like a magnet, drawing out the words from my lips. Or at least, she was. My voice was dark and bitter. "What business do you have with my life? I'm only interested in my own life." She stared at her palms. "At least, I hope I am. Something happened to me, and I need your help in making sense of it." That struck a chord with me. "I'm sure you loved her, as I once did to my boyfriend." She was the fire to my ice, the black to my white, the day to my night, the sun to my moon, the joy to my grief, the good to my evil, the hope to my grief, the solace to my rage, the life to my death. We were worlds and eons apart. But we were perfect together. Every second I spent with her was an hour of paradise. The ground she stepped on was kissed by God. She was my Polaris when I was sailing across the ocean of my life. A single teardrop crept down my cheek, the hot scar of the past. She's dead now. Since when? Since 2 months ago. Died in a tragic accident. I coughed and started fiddling with the chain again. Something flashed in the woman's eyes. Car crash, shattered spine. Her voice sounded like an autumn breeze, hiding the cold of winter in the warmth of summer. Dead in the night of the 21st of January. Each word she spoke sent flashes of red across my vision. Gray Malibu came out of nowhere. Yeah? I narrowed my eyes at the woman. How did you know? My boyfriend knew someone who died on the 21st in a car crash as well. She cleared her throat. How did you meet her? At a university. We both majored in criminology. We matched each other's cautiousness and prudence. And you studied in criminology as well. Met him when I was an undergraduate. It's funny, really, how similar our two stories are. It truly was. She turned to me again, scanning me up and down. What aren't you telling me? What do I have to tell you? The real question is, what aren't you telling me? Sighing, she murmured, I'm trying to find out why my life took a turn for the worse 2 months ago. And now, suddenly, this morning, I woke up to find that no one knew me, and the world's colors were bleached. So please, I need your help. Her lips were truly interesting. The way they pursed. They were perfectly arched, like Cupid's bow. Where had I seen them before? What do you need my help with? On the day of the accident, what were you feeling? Grief. Are you sure? What kind of question is that? Of course I was. Again, are you sure? What are you implying here? I spat, clenching my fists. I hated her so much then. The way she never flicked her eyes off of me for 1 second. What I'm saying, she continued, is that you and I both know that you felt something else that night. Guilt. Her voice was the buzz of a beehive. I doubt most people would have liked it. I swear, though, I heard it somewhere before. In the distance, the train began to whistle. I chanced a glance out the window. The rainy plains had been blotted out by a black tunnel. The Stygian wall was a nice reflection of my mind, I suppose. All aboard the Destiny Express. Yes, I snarled. I felt guilty. I felt guilty because we'd been arguing right before she ran out of the house. I tried to call her back. She didn't even look. Before she dashed across the road, something clicked inside my head. But you knew that already, didn't you? Goosebumps spread across my arm when she nodded. The hazy puzzle was slowly getting clearer. What were you arguing about? Why would I think it would be better for both of us if you stop hiding the truth, she interrupted. So, I'm going to ask again. What were you quarreling about? I'm sorry. Those deep brown eyes weren't galaxies. That was my mistake. They were black holes, sucking in everything. I was confronting her about what I saw that afternoon. My voice was black ice. I came home early, and I discovered that there were 2 other people in the house, being intimate with each other. The man, I still don't know who. The woman, well, needless to say, I did know who it was. I shuddered. She nodded again, slower this time. What did she say to you when you confronted her? That I didn't really love her, that I never really did, that I was exploiting her for money. Were you? Well, I filched the occasional penny or 2. I winced under her glare. Fine. I forced her to pay for my tuition fees. She has so much money that she doesn't know what to do with it anyhow. Might as well put it to good use. I toyed with my golden chain again. The woman didn't seem to agree with me, but she moved on. All right. I think you've helped me clear up a lot of problems now. Before I could heave a sigh of relief, she continued. But there's still one last question I want to ask you. What could that be? I started rubbing my fingers against the golden chain. The chain had the dull, tingling smell of iron. Just like something else. Something Darkware. Where were you at the moment of the accident? Shadows gathered around her eyes. I told you already. Which is where, again? Steel hands gripped my lungs. I was calling out to her, trying to stop her from recklessly dashing. She didn't listen to me. Was I imagining things? Or was there a flicker somewhere on her face? No, her neck was flickering. It was slowly bending, slowly becoming deformed. Or was I imagining things? She spoke 2 words. You're lying. The temperature seemed to plummet. What? You're lying. You know it in your heart. You've known for 2 months. Oh my. Death is a lie. No, no, no. It couldn't be happening. But it was staring right back at me. The truth clicked, like the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle fitting in. I knew now. I knew everything. Fine. 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 I admit it. I wasn't running after her. I wasn't calling out to her. I wasn't trying to stop her. No. I'm a double-faced liar. Yes, that's what I am. A psychopath. My fiancée did not die in an accident. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I dragged her out of the house. I threw her in front of a speeding gray Malibu. Oh, I watched her die. I knew it in my bones. Oh, then what are you? How are you here, haunting me to my very last day? Why have you come back? Why? Are you even real? That, she whispered. You will never know. You have lived 2 months in anguish, because I never truly left you. Every hour of your life has felt like a tortured second crawling by. Just look at what's hanging from your neck, the golden mark of Cain. I tore it off the chain and pressed it against my face. No, forgive me, please. Tears streamed down my face, a waterfall of guilt. I'll do anything. The train came to a stop at the station. Sunset. The end of the line. Oh, her smile. I hated her smile. The way they were draped over the fury within her. She glanced out the window, out of the station, out of the world. I followed her gaze at the bridge overlooking the waterfall, where it all began. There's always a way out. She stood up. How horrible she looked. The way her head was tilted to the side, almost as if her spine was broken. I trust you'll know what to do. Goodbye, Daigel. She stepped off the train. A new life. It's like I'm starting over again, James thought to himself as he gazed out of the car window. I am Sisyphus. But I reached the top of the mountain only to find another that reaches steeper and higher. What then? What will happen when I reach the top? Will I ever see the view? James, you still with us, buddy? David asked as he tapped James on the forehead. Huh? Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, James replied as he continued to gaze out of the window. The trees lining the sides of the road blurred if he didn't focus on them. As the car zoomed along, James caught glimpses of the blue sky and flat farmland behind the trees. These moments were precious in a way he hadn't yet come to appreciate. Jimmy, snap out of it, Caitlin, David's girlfriend, replied. What? I'm just enjoying the scenery. It's like an 8-hour drive. Can't I just chill for a while? James said, more indifferent to talking and thinking than he'd led on. Thoughts of the future had become a burden in his bored mind, swirling around his consciousness as if they had nowhere else to go. Most of his thoughts disappeared into the ether, but not these. This is the last time we're going to be together for a while. You're moving to the big city, Caitlin replied with an upbeat attitude. She didn't even believe what she just said, but wanted to coax her friend out of his funk. Is it that obvious? What do you mean? You know I'm only a train ride away. I'm just thinking, don't worry about me. We'll be able to have all the fun when we get there, James replied, measured but dazed all the time in the world. That's what it feels like. This exists in a space in between my past life and my future. This trip is all in the present, my moment of a finite infinity. For these last few days, my mind is exactly where it needs to be. And for that, I step outside of the bounds of time and into my own world. Will you miss all of this while you're in that concrete jungle for weeks or months at a time? David asked him. I won't be gone that long. Weeks, maybe. But that's nothing. Plus, you gotta support me chasing my dream. It's part of who I am, James replied. You didn't answer the question, Caitlin replied. Yeah, I'll probably miss it, James said. It's my home, but it's not like I'll never be back. You never know. You might like it there in the city. Then I won't regret it. Regret it? Maybe not. But you'll lose a part of yourself. Is it worth that sacrifice? I haven't even left yet. That's a pretty big assumption. Do you like who you are? Caitlin asked. What is this? James said, I thought this was a road trip, not an intervention. You didn't answer the question again. Why do I owe you an answer? Why right when you ask? That's pretty personal. No matter how long I've known you, you know where we're going, what we're going to do. You need to answer. We need to know. Why? Ugh, fine. Yes, I do. I do like myself. See, was that so difficult? No. But it was a lot of pressure on the answer. Do you feel the release? The release of confession? I guess. Exactly. I knew you'd be a great fit. Where are we going? David, you've been quiet, James asked. You'll just have to see, David replied. Shoot. 8 hours into the Canadian wilderness. It's probably not too cold. It's spring, after all. But still, do we really have a plan on where we're gonna stay? All we need is a tent, sleeping bag, some water, and food. We'll be fine, David replied. But where are we going? You said you had a plan. Don't worry about it, James. It's a surprise. The conversation died down for a while, giving James a moment of reprieve. One that he needed now more than ever. His introspective nature, combined with the uncertainty he was feeling with his friends, was beginning to take up more space in his mind. Maybe, I don't know, Dave and Kate as well as I thought. We've only been friends for a year or so, but I thought that was long enough. A vacation into the unknown, they said. A vacation into the unknown, I thought. What a wonderful way to separate my past and future. A moment outside of time. At least, metaphorically, a moment outside of time. That was the last thought that crossed James's mind as he drifted off into a light nap, waking periodically with the increasing bumps on the road as the pavement became worn. It was a clear sign that they were getting closer. The harsh winter weather would break down the concrete year after year until it turned into rubble. Where are we? James asked as he awoke. You've been out for a while, like an hour? David replied. We're outside of the U.S. border and into Canada, just past a few towns. Hard to say exactly, though, Caitlin replied. If you don't know where we are, how do you know where we're going? Also, how did we go through the border without either you or the border officials waking me up? Oh, don't worry. We just grabbed your passport out of your bag and they let us go. You went through my bag? James replied as he looked over and saw everything tousled around. Some items still in the bag and others outside. But either way, it was chaotic. How did I sleep for so long? I just took a sip of my water and passed out. Don't worry so much. We were just trying to let you sleep. With all the time we have left, we figured you wouldn't mind putting your bag back together. Wait, How long was I out? Where's my phone? That clock doesn't seem right. The views outside the car had turned into green trees. But instead of farmland behind them, there were just more trees. They kept whizzing by, but if he focused on the mountain painted across the sky in front of him, everything was steady, and the trees were clear. The north face. That's what they've been talking about. The north face of the mountain, leaving all of society behind for a while. Nobody exists on the other side of that mountain. We will become truly alone. Is that why I've been thinking of this? James, you got all quiet for a moment, David asked. I just spaced out. My bad, James replied. Yeah, don't worry about my bag. Thanks for letting me sleep. The mountain grew larger as they approached. Seemingly every few minutes, there was a noticeable change in the horizon. The mountain is growing, but the clock is barely changing. How is that possible? It's like we've driven hours in minutes. The closer we get, the faster everything seems to speed up. Where the hell am I? What's going on here? We're here, Caitlin said with a tone of excitement and playfulness. James opened the car door and stepped outside. It was like nothing he had ever seen. The mountain was all around them, like a cylinder cut out of rock, as high as he could see. The car was in a clearing, but broadly, there were more of the green coniferous trees that surrounded the mountain. It was dark outside, and as James craned his neck towards the sky, the constellations were so luminescent. From the moment that I stepped out of the car into this other world, I couldn't hear a sound. It was so quiet, like shifting between realms. But now, all I can hear is the sound of that hum. James's thoughts became frantic. A consistent hum. Sometimes voices. More voices. Chaotic whispers echoing across the open cavern. Where are David and Caitlin? The trunk is open, but they're gone? How is that possible? What am I doing in these clothes? What am I doing here? What's this? A red robe? I see the smiles coming out of the trees. The voices are getting louder. Please, God, give me a chance to climb that mountain. I want to be Sisyphus again. I know where I am now, and all I want to do is be back home, ready to go to the concrete jungle, ready to climb the mountain to the end of the line. When I was a child, I loved trains. Pretty typical little boy enchantment, I think. Wooden tracks and tiny metal wheels, 100 different configurations across my bedroom floor, with the train track pattern carpet. We lived in the countryside, and the trains only ran through the city, so seeing the real thing on a rare outing was like Christmas and birthdays combined. I remember even when I got older that my mother and I would stop at the side of the footpath to watch as they shot over the tracks. I never liked Thomas the Tank Engine, though. The faces creeped me out. I'm mostly neutral about trains now, I think. Adulthood makes you neutral about the things that excited you in childhood, or they encourage you to act like you're neutral about them. I started taking the train daily in my second year of university, and I guess it lost some of its shininess, but I was never as miserable with the journey as some of my fellow commuters. If I had to sit for 40 minutes either way, might as well spend it on a speed-smooth train, watching the landscape shoot by like I'd imagined as a kid. I can't say there's a lot of joy in it today, even if it seems a little fitting in some ways. Beginning and end, you know. A child dreaming of trains, and an adult booking it to the fastest one possible. I still push through to my usual car, the one with the most windows and the best views, opting to look our desecrated landscape in the eyes as we passed over it. The car is emptier than I thought it would be. Are people not flocking to the trains, desperate for a seat, a chance to watch everything flying past? And I settle where I can watch the landscape and the car around me from the same place. I rode to the end of the line once, when I had first moved to the city, and just wanted to quietly indulge that train-loving child still in my chest. I moved from seat to seat as the train emptied, getting the best views and just existing in the feeling. I think I was listening to Imagine Dragons, or something equally fitting for my youth. Just watching everything fly past and trying not to think about grades and professor and facsimiles of friends. All of that stuff had seemed so important back then, like it was the whole world. Today, I'll make that same trip, the end of the line with my eyes on the horizon. No music, though. Today, I'll keep my focus sharp. The car fills slowly and brings with it more commotion than usual. Groups of people talking in frantic pitches and hysterical sobs. Some are dark and grouchy. Those pessimistic, I told you so people. Some are trying to project sunlight through their shaking hands, smiling and saying how much better things will be at the end of the line. All of them are afraid. I am too, but I'm glad to be on the train. The train seems to be faster than usual when it at last sets off. I suppose safety restrictions around speed don't matter anymore. It's still safer than off the train, and there's less to worry about when nothing is coming in the other direction. When we pass the motorway, everything is the same. All the cars heading north, nothing passing the other way. All the lanes filled up to the brim. Those are the people who couldn't leave a thing behind, who filled their seats with books and family heirlooms and nice coats. A nice thought, but none of them will make it to the north. That's what the men across the car are saying, shaking heads to hide their shaking hands. We ride for maybe half an hour before someone spots them. It starts with gasps of horror among friends, pointing and screaming. Then a child crying uncontrollably in one of the further cars. There are packs of them on the highway, stopping the cars and creating barricades to capture as many drivers as possible. A few of the trucks and four-wheel drives manage to push their way off the asphalt and rattle down onto the grass, careening wildly into any direction that is away, for any dwindling possibility of safety. Some of them make it, but even then, that's only for now. We've seen enough now to know that the carnage will only grow. We all know that the North isn't going to be safe for much longer either, but trains are good for running. We can leave it behind for a little while. They don't go after the electric cars, someone pointed out a few weeks into the first attack, drawn to the noise of the gas guzzlers maybe, or the stink of the exhaust. Back then, the attacks were still distant enough that you could brush that off as propaganda from parent to child, a myth to encourage quiet voices and regular bathing. But it went from an unreal kind of warning to a stark reality, with patrols in the streets and locked doors and halting economy. Then the conspiracy theorists reasoned it was government propaganda, some kind of leftist agenda to keep the gas cars off the streets. But then the patrols all got turned, and then nobody really felt safe enough to joke about it anymore. They were saying this city would be the first to go. It looked like something out of a movie from 2014 that teenagers watched religiously, swearing up and down that it wasn't just some dark fiction, but a prediction of the future. This was where we were heading. Kind of ironic, because everyone ignored them, even though the main character of every movie was a teenager being ignored. I guess there were plenty of warnings. We were still all so late to pack up and leave. I guess I felt like it was a weird thing to do alone. Great timing, social anxiety in the midst of the apocalypse. But even now on the train, everyone's in a group. Those teenagers' girls hyperventilating with their Stanley drink bottles by the windows. Those elderly folks joining wrinkled hands and sharing memories they're grateful for in the aisle seats. The grizzled old men trying to pretend they don't care about each other when they'd waited for the others to leave, risked their lives in doing so. They're always in groups in the movies, too, even if only so one of them can get infected and traumatize the rest of them. Maybe I shouldn't have moved so far away. I would at least have my mother then, probably disturbingly nonchalant about the whole deal. As infected numbers grew and showed in increasingly graphic fashion on the evening news. "They won't get us," she would be saying, maybe doing some knitting or embroidery or something equally casual. "They're still people," I would say. My train sets wouldn't be out anymore, but I'd still have them, tucked into an old wooden chest. maybe I'd be sitting on it, gravitating to them as I gravitated to everything from childhood. And when it came to the north, when the screams were heard without turning on the TV, I wondered if she'd show fear then, or simply lock the door and light the fire. I probably could have unlocked the door with black in the whites of my eyes, crawling up my veins, sobbing hideous ichor as the infection twisted my brain, begged me to find a new vessel, begged me to become that which I'd been running from. She would be too stubborn to run then. I would tell her that it wanted me to kill, wanted me to submit and drag down whoever I could. And she would offer her chest and her veins and take the pain that way. "It's always been you and me, Bug," she'd say, without a trace of sadness or regret. "Bring me with you. We'll see what comes next." They're coming closer to the train now. Someone is praying in a faltering fashion that suggests they might not have bothered in a long time. The conductor's voice comes over the intercom. "Stay calm. The tracks are clear, and we're making good time." But it doesn't do anything to calm anybody. We're in the frontmost car, so they'll reach us last. But we'll also be the last to see them coming. It would have been nice to travel in a group, but I've never been very good at groups. Nobody ever feels the same as you about everything, which means that everybody sucks at least a little bit. It's still nice to imagine conversation, but the imagined conversation is much more between several variations of myself. The me in early college that's listening to Imagine Dragons, watching the apocalypse, and thinking about those homework due dates that we won't live to see. The child me playing with wooden trains and cheering to pass them in the street, maybe once or twice a year. For a moment, I consider sending a photo to my mother. Consider asking her if she would want to be infected if it was me, or if I should roam with the pack and see her later. We haven't been talking much lately either. She sends me a link to Facebook sometimes, and I send her a picture of the meal I door-dashed sitting in a dirty pan. I don't know how to segue into asking how she wants me to die. There's a fresh wave of screaming and sobbing, twice the finality of anything else. And it takes me a moment to realize it's coming, not from another car, but from the very front, where the conductor sits. I brace myself before the impact, but it's not any use. The train flips over itself. Something left on the tracks, probably. Or the metal itself chewed and twisted away. Everyone is screaming, and we all tumble over each other as the car tumbles and glass smashes in all directions. Some people huddle further into the rubble as if they could ever stay hidden. Some pick themselves out, bleeding and shattered, and try to run. I've come to terms with the inevitable. I don't think anyone can run or hide. I think this is it. But I got to have one last ride on my way to the end. late for rest. This story centers around death. I'm late, she thought, as she ran for the bus. Her friends would say that was her life's motto. Amelia scrambled on the bus, trying not to jostle anyone. She had been given a final warning about not getting to work on time, and knew her boss was serious. She was good at her job. But this city had over 2 million people. She could be replaced. In fact, she was one of many autopsy technicians who were employed at her job. She enjoyed working with her colleagues and liked working under her supervisor. The problem was, on top of being a natural procrastinator, she was in school full-time while working full-time. But this was her last semester. Her goal was to become an ME. She had always been interested in true crime as a kid and spent her free time watching the ID channel. Her first interest was in forensic science because she wanted to investigate crime scenes. But death and dead bodies never bothered her, and she started working in the morgue as an undergrad, which spurred her interest in forensic pathology. It was then that she learned she was gifted in reading corpses. All those years of hearing about petechiae, cyanosis, and lividity became useful. She could read bodies like a book. That, combined with her proclivity for stockpiling information about diseases and murder, made her a veritable glossary of forensic pathology. Amelia was well liked at work because she was knowledgeable and friendly. Plus, she had a great work ethic while at work. It was outside of work that she struggled with procrastination. She just struggled to stay focused. If she had an assignment to do that required research, she'd end up going down rabbit holes on a side topic that caught her eye. She would know it's time to stop. But if a deadline wasn't impending, she knew she could get away with pushing something off in favor of exploring her current interest. This habit is what created such a wealth of knowledge for her. Unfortunately, it also made her have to do everything last minute or even late. Since becoming an adult and responsible for her own finances, she has never filed her taxes on time. 2 years in a row, she forgot altogether. To compensate, Amelia didn't get much sleep and often slept through her alarms. It was probably her body and brain's way to ensure she got enough sleep. Her boss didn't care how good of a worker she was if she continuously showed up late. She understood that, yet she still struggled to alter her habits. On top of that, she couldn't stay late because of her grad research. She had a thesis to finish and defend. Amelia lived in a state of guilt and shame over not being better at time management, but figured she'd have time to learn how to get better at it later. Today, it was important to not be late. There was still a possibility of making it on time. She missed her first bus, but ran full speed 6 blocks to catch a different one. She had a chance to rest before her stop, and then she'd have to sprint again for the light rail. It was a tight plan, requiring more physical exertion than she was used to, especially outside in Houston in the summer. But it was better to turn up drenched in sweat than late. For once, Amelia made it to work on time. And surprisingly, she wasn't sweating or even tired. Smiling to herself, she walked into the lab, expecting a few comments razzing her for unusual timeliness. However, everyone looked stern. This wasn't unusual in a morgue where many unfortunate events cause bodies to end up here. It was especially hard when it was a child or a victim of a violent assault. Or worse, a child who was a victim of a violent assault. Occasionally, a friend or relative of one of her colleagues came through. Everyone was very professional, but an underlying awkwardness was always present. Amelia approached the body they were centered around. She looked down at herself. Shock doesn't begin to describe what she felt. Confusion, of course, was also a dominant reaction. Was this a prank? The level of cruelty involved in doing something like this as a prank was beyond her comprehension. "What the fuck?" she yelled. For once, she was not late. And this is how they treat her. No one turned to look at her or even responded. How the fuck did you do this? Doubt started to flood in. She grew up in the foster system. Did she have a sister she didn't know about? Did she have a twin? Who is this? She yelled as her frustration and fear grew. Still, no one met her eye or replied. When did she arrive? Her colleague Nate asked. "Half an hour ago," Mike, her supervisor, replied. For once, she was early. What the actual fuck, guys? "You are going too far," she screamed. She liked these people. How could they be so cruel? Was this supposed to be some kind of lesson for her extreme tardiness? Like an extreme example of what could happen if she continued living her life always running late. Ironically, I believe she was hit by a bus while she was running for a different one, Mike suggested. Wow, death by bus, Angela quipped. This is sick. It's not funny. Who is this? She cried. Mike stepped back right into her, literally into her. It was slowly dawning on Amelia that this wasn't a prank. She looked down at the corpse that was obviously hers. She was dead. She was hit by a bus. It was unfathomable, but she still had a lot to do. "I don't think there is a need for an autopsy," Mike announced. Slowly, everyone turned away, and Amelia took the chance to step closer to her body. "Wait!" she exclaimed. No one listened. Amelia remembered her last moments. She had gotten in an argument with a man near the bus stop. His attempt at catcalling was graphic and disturbing, and she told him, "Shut the fuck up, creep." He retorted with a comment suggesting she needed to be raped. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Amelia demanded. "You're an uptight bitch," who needs a good dicking down, whether you want one or not," he replied. "I don't have time for this," she mumbled to herself while looking around for help. She saw a cop car across the street and started to head that way. She had to pause because a bus was rapidly approaching her stop. The last thing she remembers is being pushed. "This was not an accident," she yelled at her colleagues. Desperation set in as she realized this would be recorded as an accident instead of the murder it was. Legally, it was probably manslaughter, but when you're the one killed, you feel murdered, not manslaughtered. Her colleagues continued to go about their business as Mike filled out the paperwork. "Please look again, Mike," she said as she peered over his shoulder. She watched him type the details, or her death, which she found the most surreal event of the day. "Please," she whispered again, before going to look at her body for evidence that she had been pushed. She needed someone to turn herself over. She even reached out herself, but in her non-corporeal state, there was nothing she could do. She cried tearlessly as she lost hope. "I feel we should do something more for Amelia," Angela said. "Like plan her funeral," Mike suggested. She had no family. "I was thinking more along the lines of an autopsy," she offered. "Amelia would have wanted one." It's true. Even if she hadn't suspected an attack, she still would want an autopsy. She had already planned for her body to be donated to the body farm when she died. She had lived a life of science and wanted to continue in death. "You're right," Mike said. Before getting up, he changed the paperwork to justify an autopsy. Amelia waited as patiently as she could until it happened. Her body was finally rolled over, and there were marks indicating that she wasn't just pushed, but punched in the back with 2 fists. "Holy shit," Angela remarked. Stunned, the whole team began discussing possibilities as Amelia felt herself being pulled away. "No, I don't want to go," she cried. This would be the final rabbit hole she'd ever go down, and the most important one to her. She fought against this invisible force, tugging her away, because her interest was piqued. She had to know that they solved this crime. The cops needed to know to look at security cameras so they could find this guy. She physically felt like she was in a game of tug of war, with her soul being the middle of the rope. Finally, one last tug pulled her away. There's at least one place she could not be late for. Late for rest. This story centers around death. "I'm late," she thought, as she ran for the bus. Her friends would say that was her life's motto. Amelia scrambled on the bus, trying not to jostle anyone. She had been given a final warning about not getting to work on time and knew her boss was serious. She was good at her job, but this city had over 2 million people. She could be replaced. In fact, she was one of many autopsy technicians who were employed at her job. She enjoyed working with her colleagues and liked working under her supervisor. The problem was, on top of being a natural procrastinator, she was in school full-time while working full-time. But this was her last semester. Her goal was to become an ME. She had always been interested in true crime as a kid and spent her free time watching the ID channel. Her first interest was in forensic science because she wanted to investigate crime scenes. But death and dead bodies never bothered her. And she started working in the morgue as an undergrad, which spurred her interest in forensic pathology. It was then that she learned she was gifted in reading corpses. All those years of hearing about petechiae, cyanosis, and lividity became useful. She could read bodies like a book. That, combined with her proclivity for stockpiling information about diseases and murder, made her a veritable glossary of forensic pathology. Amelia was well liked at work because she was knowledgeable and friendly. Plus, she had a great work ethic while at work. It was outside of work that she struggled with procrastination. She just struggled to stay focused. If she had an assignment to do that required research, she'd end up going down rabbit holes on a side topic that caught her eye. She would know it's time to stop. But if a deadline wasn't impending, she knew she could get away with pushing something off in favor of exploring her current interest. This habit is what created such a wealth of knowledge for her. Unfortunately, it also made her have to do everything last minute or even late. Since becoming an adult and responsible for her own finances, she has never filed her taxes on time. 2 years in a row, she forgot altogether. To compensate, Amelia didn't get much sleep and often slept through her alarms. It was probably her body and brain's way to ensure she got enough sleep. Her boss didn't care how good of a worker she was if she continuously showed up late. She understood that, yet she still struggled to alter her habits. On top of that, she couldn't stay late because of her grad research. She had a thesis to finish and defend. Amelia lived in a state of guilt and shame over not being better at time management, but figured she'd have time to learn how to get better at it later. Today, it was important to not be late. There was still a possibility of making it on time. She missed her first bus, but ran full speed 6 blocks to catch a different one. She had a chance to rest before her stop, and then she'd have to sprint again for the light rail. It was a tight plan, requiring more physical exertion than she was used to, especially outside in Houston in the summer. But it was better to turn up drenched in sweat than late. For once, Amelia made it to work on time, and surprisingly, she wasn't sweating or even tired. Smiling to herself, she walked into the lab, expecting a few comments razzing her for unusual timeliness. However, everyone looked stern. This wasn't unusual in a morgue where many unfortunate events cause bodies to end up here. It was especially hard when it was a child or a victim of a violent assault. Or worse, a child who was a victim of a violent assault. Occasionally, a friend or relative of one of her colleagues came through. Everyone was very professional, but an underlying awkwardness was always present. Amelia approached the body they were centered around. She looked down at herself. Shock doesn't begin to describe what she felt. Confusion, of course, was also a dominant reaction. Was this a prank? The level of cruelty involved in doing something like this as a prank was beyond her comprehension. "What the fuck?" she yelled. For once, she was not late. And this is how they treat her. No one turned to look at her or even responded. "How the fuck did you do this?" Doubt started to flood in. She grew up in the foster system. Did she have a sister she didn't know about? Did she have a twin? "Who is this?" she yelled as her frustration and fear grew. Still, no one met her eye or replied. "When did she arrive?" her colleague Nate asked. "Half an hour ago," Mike, her supervisor, replied. For once, she was early. "What the actual fuck, guys? You are going too far," she screamed. She liked these people. How could they be so cruel? Was this supposed to be some kind of lesson for her extreme tardiness? Like an extreme example of what could happen if she continued living her life, always running late. Ironically, I believe she was hit by a bus while she was running for a different one, Mike suggested. "Wow, death by bus," Angela quipped. "This is sick. It's not funny." "Who is this?" she cried. Mike stepped back right into her, literally into her. It was slowly dawning on Amelia that this wasn't a prank. She looked down at the corpse that was obviously hers. She was dead. She was hit by a bus. It was unfathomable, but she still had a lot to do. "I don't think there is a need for an autopsy," Mike announced. Slowly, everyone turned away, and Amelia took the chance to step closer to her body. "Wait!" she exclaimed. No one listened. Amelia remembered her last moments. She had gotten in an argument with a man near the bus stop. His attempt at catcalling was graphic and disturbing, and she told him, "Shut the fuck up, creep." He retorted with a comment suggesting she needed to be raped. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Amelia demanded. "You're an uptight bitch who needs a good dicking down, whether you want one or not," he replied. "I don't have time for this," she mumbled to herself while looking around for help. She saw a cop car across the street and started to head that way. She had to pause because a bus was rapidly approaching her stop. The last thing she remembers is being pushed. "This was not an accident," she yelled at her colleagues. Desperation set in as she realized this would be recorded as an accident instead of the murder it was. Legally, it was probably manslaughter, but when you're the one killed, you feel murdered, not manslaughtered. Her colleagues continued to go about their business as Mike filled out the paperwork. "Please, look again, Mike," she said as she peered over his shoulder. She watched him type the details, or her death, which she found the most surreal event of the day. "Please," she whispered again, before going to look at her body for evidence that she had been pushed. She needed someone to turn herself over. She even reached out herself. But in her non-corporeal state, there was nothing she could do. She cried tearlessly as she lost hope. "I feel we should do something more for Amelia," Angela said. "Like plan her funeral?" Mike suggested. She had no family. "I was thinking more along the lines of an autopsy," she offered. "Amelia would have wanted one." It's true. Even if she hadn't suspected an attack, she still would want an autopsy. She had already planned for her body to be donated to the body farm when she died. She had lived a life of science and wanted to continue in death. "You're right," Mike said. Before getting up, he changed the paperwork to justify an autopsy. Amelia waited as patiently as she could until it happened. Her body was finally rolled over, and there were marks indicating that she wasn't just pushed, but punched in the back with 2 fists. "Holy shit," Angela remarked. Stunned, the whole team began discussing possibilities as Amelia felt herself being pulled away. "No, I don't want to go," she cried. This would be the final rabbit hole she'd ever go down, and the most important one to her. She fought against this invisible force tugging her away because her interest was piqued. She had to know that they solved this crime. The cops needed to know to look at security cameras so they could find this guy. She physically felt like she was in a game of tug of war, with her soul being the middle of the rope. Finally, one last tug pulled her away. There's at least one place she could not be late for.